live Sangha. Today on Root Chakra Sunday, I thought I'd do a very special kind of live stream today, where we do it entirely whispered. That is, today is ASMR Sunday, and if it goes well, it'll be the beginning of a new segment. Special kind of live stream. This was recommended by our dear viewer, Sky Guardian, who suggested that we dedicate Sundays to ASMR. So, why not? Welcome, Caden. As we await our first guests to arrive, let me dedicate this live stream to Jagat Guru Dham Shri Kripaluji Maharaj, who was an embodiment of divine bliss, feeling contented. Do forgive me, as my internet seems to have momentarily disconnected me, but hopefully I should be back. Thank you, Ragnhildur, for your rose, and thank you, Shakira, for your heart me. Jai Sitaram, and welcome the dude. Jai Gurudev Nim Karoli Baba. Radhe Priscilla. Hello, Shakira. Yes, you share that it's back. Good to know. And thank you, Priscilla, for your rose too. Now, I've said at the beginning, but now that we have guests here, I'll say it again, that this is a special live stream today where we put extra emphasis on affirmation and relaxation on this ASMR Sunday. But besides that, it'll be a regular live stream. So we shall start the same way as always, and that is to open up the floor for my question of the day. Thank you, Bethany, for your 19 roses. Bless one. Radhe. I'm happy to hear that some of you are excited today for this ASMR. My question of the day today is, why is sleep important? Why is sleep important? And thank you, Tatvamasi, for your 5 roses. Indeed, today is ASMR Sunday. Shakira, you share because resting is necessary to recharge. Indeed. Ease, you say, sleep helps the brain and body regulate and rest as well as rejuvenate. I love that. Tattvam Asi has a more spiritual answer, which is to remind you of the self. Indeed, yogic sleep is such that it should remind one of Turiya, the 4th state of consciousness, in which we are merged with Brahman. Priscilla, you say important, very important to brain and soul. I love that. And little holy stone, you say to show us nothing is real, it's all a hallucination. To get us away from this Maya for a little bit, indeed. Thank you, Zealot, for your whipped coffee. And thank you, Sammy, for your square, a 7x7 square of roses. Radhe. that sleep helps you explore the different aspects of the mind and communicate with oneself. Beautifully said. Lauren, you say to allow our minds and memories to switch from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic nervous system. Thus do. Sky Guardian, you say sleep is a good tool to understand the 3 states of consciousness: the waker, the dreamer, and the deep sleeper. Siwa, you share that sleeping allows dreaming, and dreaming allows traveling. Beautifully said, and I love your butterfly emoji at the end of that. It reminds me of the Taoist who once said that while I'm asleep, I'm a man dreaming that I'm a butterfly, and while I'm awake, I'm a butterfly dreaming I'm a man. Thank you, Alicia Infinite, for your heart me. And thank you, Irmena, for your ice cream cone. Jai Sita Ram. Sammy, you share that you never sleep mainly because your son has epilepsy. Such a lovely mother you are, to sleep with one eye open. Being there for your son is such a selfless service, and I'm sure that you find rest in other ways. Tatvamasi, you answer to give us a glimpse of possibilities. I love that. And yes, Sunday's ASMR is real. Jai Sita Ram. So, without further ado, before we get on to reading from Swami Mukundanandaji's Art and Science of Happiness, I thank you all for answering my question of the day. Such lovely answers. It's clear that there are so many important reasons for us to sleep, from rejuvenating our body, mind, and to getting us more in touch with ourself, the soul. Today's episode is extra special, especially when it comes to reading from Swami Mukundananda's Art and Science of Happiness. We finished last time chapter 10, which was all about the Vedic perspective on happiness. Today we're starting the last chapter of this book, the ultimate happiness. But before we start the final chapter, we'll summarize all that happened in the last chapter. Swamiji has so lovely put a summary at the end of every chapter, so we'll just read the final summary. Amongst the Hindus, the Vedas are revered as the highest of the holy books. These Vedas are the eternal knowledge of God. The Vedic scriptures have nourished the Indian culture, making it profoundly devotional. As per the Vedic scriptures, we can savor varieties of happiness. There is tamasic happiness in the mode of ignorance, rajasic happiness in the mode of passion, and sattvic happiness in the mode of goodness. However, none of these satisfy the soul. Our soul is divine, and hence the kind of happiness it seeks is also divine. It won't settle for less. This happiness must possess three attributes: Sat, everlasting; Chit, ever fresh; and Ananda, infinite in extent. Sat Chit Anandam. Where can we find such bliss? The Vedic scriptures proclaim that the definition of God Himself is the ocean of bliss. Since we are souls, and as those souls, little parts of the source, we naturally love our original nature, God, who is full of eternal, ever fresh, and infinite bliss. The mistake we made was that we forgot our soul nature and identified ourselves with our body instead. In the bodily conception of the self, we are chasing the delights of the material senses and offering them to our soul. But material happiness can never perfectly satisfy our soul. The divine happiness we seek is none other than God Himself. So later on in this live stream, we'll start reading the final chapter that is the ultimate happiness. Until then, we'll continue as per normal with our regular format, just with particular emphasis on relaxation. I thank you very much for listening, everyone. I'll minimize the book cover now. Good evening, Fiji water bottle. And that's right, just call me G. Today we're putting ASMR on the priority. Thank you, Sophia, for your finger heart. And thank you, Mickey, for your tiny yippee. And thank you, Sammy, for your 16 roses. Bordoga, you ask. What is the one thing you care about the most in your life that is not people or pets? I care about serving others so that I may fulfill my role here as part of this world. That through the purification of my own self, I may uplift others. Hello, Masa. And hello, Ricky. I'm doing quite well today, thank you. Before I got on this live stream, I had a massage for the first time in my life. It was very relaxing. How are you doing? Hello, Brandon. Bordoga, you ask who is my role model, if any, and why? Everyone I come across has some virtue that I don't, and so there exists a role model in everyone. But in particular, I have such high reverence for, well, the author of the book that we were reading for one, Swami Mukundanandaji, as well as his guru, Jagat Guru Dham Shri Kripaluji Maharaj. Young blood, have come out, research papers that exclaimed how getting your hands dirty, working with dirt and leaves and branches, actually starts to produce some of the endorphins in the body. Quite literally starts to increase our levels of the happy chemicals. So, Bo, you ask, what do we do when we unlock a traumatic memory? You just want it to go away. Indeed, if you observe the initial reaction, the mind wants to repress negative sensations. And the best thing you can do is, after observing that, let the feeling come. The memory is not there to hurt you. No memory can take away your happiness. It might bring up some emotions, and that's okay. It's completely understandable that emotions have the power to bring up deep emotions. And if you let yourself feel those emotions, they gradually transform. The process of healing is often painful, and the pain is a good sign that you are healing. Thank you, Irmena, for another 3 TikToks. Hariom Tatsat. Young blood, you share that you feel touching nature is a part of grounding, quite literally. Ezekiel, you ask, am I gaining weight? I am, actually, for the first time in my life. I've been trying to gain weight. Unfortunately, however, for most of my life, this was not possible due to anxiety. And now that I have a better friendship with my anxiety, my appetite has returned. So I'm able to enjoy eating meals again with my friends, my family. Such a blessing that is. Bordoga, you ask, what is my biggest problem in life right now? That's a good question. Every day I wake up with a wish to the universe. I ask for it to guide me to the graces that I'm currently ignorant of. The truth is that we're surrounded by blessings, but much like myself, we are unable to recognize the blessing, and so we remain ignorant of how much good is already with us. So, I wake up not with the intention to get something that I don't already have, but to allow myself to realize the blessings I already have. Thank you, Fiji water bottle, for your cloud bread. Radhe, Radhe. And thank you, Wikapi, Winyan, Star Woman. Thank you for your love, you. And another one too. Jai Sitaram. Today is ASMR Sunday, which is a segment which Sky Guardian, one of our lovely viewers, has suggested, where we dedicate a day of the week to you've already taken the first step, which is to acknowledge it as a being which is ready to be your friend. When we see it as an enemy, this is where the trouble begins. I'm sure you've noticed that in life, when people assume you to be someone, you already take on that role a little bit. For example, if someone sees you as an enemy, then out of defense, you almost become a little bit of an enemy. Our anxiety is very similar, in that if we treat it as an enemy, it kind of becomes one. But when we treat it as a friend, it also becomes one. So when you notice the anxiety arising, imagine it like a friend coming over. Would you slam the door in its face and go, no, I don't want you here? That would make the friend mad. Instead, we'd welcome in the friend for tea. Say hello. I have to be honest with you, my friend. I'm not sure how to be hospitable to you right now, since I'm going through a lot. But I'll do my best to hold space for you and listen to what you have to say, as long as you will also listen to what I have to say. And maybe this can just be a thought process, or maybe you can actually symbolize this. You could sit down on your floor, pour yourself a cup of tea, and imagine that as you drink, you're feeding your anxiety too. Have some, my friend, it'll calm you down. The more we welcome our emotions, the less of an enemy they become. Thank you, Anna, for your tiny. Yippee. And thank you, Bandagor, for your cheer me up and heart me. And Jess Williamson, thank you for your heart me too. And thank you, Agapi Winyan, for another love you. Jai Sita Ram. Sammy, you share that it's 1 a.m. in the UK. Well, I wish you the best of dreams when you get there. Shakira, you ask, do we get little bells? I think we can. Master, you ask about thoughts on anger and negative emotions. Indeed, if one wishes to utilize the full extent of their being, then we must not give our power away in the reaction to our emotions. When anger arises, or any other negative emotion, when we welcome that anger in, it begins to liquefy almost, becomes less firm and more soft. It's in the rejection of our emotions does a reaction that could cause harm occur to ourselves or to those around us. And if we're fully one with our emotions, then you could be angry, you could be sad, you could be joyful, you could be afraid. It's all a part of the human experience. And you don't let the emotions take away your self-restraint. psychology, sometimes positive and negative terms are used. But this only refers to the presence of something or an absence of something. Negative emotions are not bad. They indicate an absence of something. And positive emotions are not necessarily good either. They just indicate the presence of something. But whether it's an absence or presence, both are valid sensations. Thank you, neighbor lady, for your heart me, a team bracelet, 3 of them, and a cheer me up. Jai Sitaram. Thank you, Zobo, for another heart me and 2 team bracelets. And thank you, Fiji Water Bottle, for another team bracelet and rose. Radhe, Radhe. Thank you, Priscilla, for your rose. And Christina, thank you for your rose too. Money. You're wondering, what's my opinion on anxiety medication? Us humans have such different physiologies from each other and neurologies. What works for some of us might not work for others. And what works for others might not work for ourselves. For example, my doctor tried to get me on an anxiety medication, which ended up not working. But as I deepened my spiritual practice, I was able to become more communicative with her and explain sincerely that I'd like to work with her so that we may come to terms with how we can befriend this anxiety in me, because the current analysis seems to not be fruitful. So with that confidence, I have a better repertoire now with my doctor, and she transitioned me to a different anxiety medication, which has been helping a lot. Sometimes we may feel as though spirituality is meant to replace Western science, but I believe it should enhance your relationship with everything. It should inspire you to make that phone call and get the help you require, as long as you feel like inwardly whatever happens to the body is something that happens to the body, rather than something that happens to you as a soul, if that makes sense. Sell it. You share that sometimes you feel guilty for all of the medications you take to be mentally/physically well. That's very understandable. You might feel like to really be the best version of yourself, you should be free from any external vices. And spiritually, there is a lot of truth in being free from such things. But remember, it's a kind of mental freedom that's desired. You are always the truest version of yourself in every moment. You are existence, consciousness, bliss itself. This body and mind that we've been given, it's a part of the Kali Yuga, the age of darkness. If you look under a microscope, you'll find we have microplastics in our body. It's no one's fault in particular that so many of us are dependent on certain practices to keep ourselves physically and mentally stable. Zealot, I am certainly here to affirm you. Thank you, Ragnhildur, for your rose. And Zealot, thank you for your 8 cloud breaths. We truly gotta forgive ourselves more. Indeed, Fiji water bottle. I couldn't agree more. Now I did see that Echo Leaf came in. I would like to read to you another short page from the pocket Pema Chodron. She is a Buddhist nun. Someone said yesterday that a random page will never be the first page. So today we're reading the first page. The Noble Heart. Bodhicitta is a Sanskrit word that means noble or awakened heart. It is said to be present in all beings, just as butter is inherent in milk and oil is inherent in the sesame seed. This soft spot is inherent in you and me. It is said that in difficult times, it is only bodhicitta that heals. When inspiration has become hidden, when we feel ready to give up, this is the time when healing can be found in the tenderness of pain itself. This is the time to touch the genuine heart of bodhicitta. In the midst of loneliness, in the midst of fear, in the middle of feeling misunderstood and rejected, is the heartbeat of all things, the genuine heart of sadness. Just as a jewel that has been buried in the earth for 1,000,000 years is not discolored or harmed, in the same way, this noble heart is not affected by all of our kicking and screaming. The jewel can be brought out into the light at any time, and it will glow as brilliantly as if nothing has ever happened. No matter how committed we are to unkindness, selfishness, or greed, the genuine heart of bodhicitta cannot be lost. It is here in all that lives, never marred and completely whole. And that's right, Echo Leaf, you spelled it right. Bodhicitta. And Zealot, you were wondering what was that book again? It's the pocket Pema Chodron. She is a very wholesome lady. She is well known for her works in writing many things on Buddhism. She's particularly famous for just her authenticity and humility. She doesn't see herself as a Buddha or enlightened or anyone other than just a regular person who is coming to terms with is it that allows them to take our happiness away? Ultimately, we were the ones that gave them the power to take our happiness away. Of course, it was always with a pure intention. We only wish the best for ourselves. But sometimes our intentions can tangle ourselves in knots, and we end up being the bad guy within ourselves. Fortunately, the mind is not only your greatest enemy, but also your best friend, and it will do everything to make up for the ways it has hurt. Just call me G, you ask. When do you feel closest to Source? When one shuns the experiences of the senses and turns their attention to forgiveness, sincerity, truth, kindness, and humility. These are the qualities of the Source. Yes, do eat Shakira. Thank you, Fiji Water Bottle, for another heart me. Radhe, Radhe. And thank you, Jenny Lee, for your heart me too. Jai Sita Ram. I like the way you put that, Fiji. Be the captain of your soul and mind. Boulevard honey, you ask. Can I try to say some words in Portuguese? Sure. And thank you, Serena, for your rose. Hari Om Tat Sat. And that was a beautiful way of putting it too, neighbor lady. We need to get out of our own way. Hello, Leslie. Hello, Andy. When do you ask? What's my thoughts on being alone? Like no friends, just goals. Having solitude can be a great period of inner transformation. Allowing yourself to be motivated from within is a high calling. Bulma, you ask, do I have any idea what's up? Who can fathom the true nature of reality? complexity of this existence, we may understand 1% of 1% of 1% of 1%. And even that is an overstatement, for even 1,000,000 out of infinity is still practically nothing. Thank you, Inhibition, for subscribing. I'm happy to have you here always, and I look forward to continuing to be in the service of you. Alrighty. Ingrid, you ask, can I do a meditation practice at some point? You're certainly welcome to interpret this as a kind of meditation. Zealot, you share that you feel like if my therapist dinged that little bell every time I made progress, I'd be unstoppable. Sometimes I think about the sound of getting a new achievement. I grew up on Xbox, but on PlayStation it was a different sound. Notification come up. Achievement unlocked. I think about that coming up at the bottom of my field of vision sometimes when I achieve something new. Just call me G, you ask. I know you started on TikTok as a big math/science guy. After deepening your spirituality, did any of your opinions on anything change? It's not that I realized ways in which I was wrong per se, but I was able to find truth in more things. Whereas before I could only see truth here, now I can see truth here. Hare Krishna. Hello, Samantha. Xanax, you're wondering, what are my perspectives on the spirit guides? The greatest guide one has is none other than their own spirit. The self is none other than the greatest teacher of all. When your own self becomes externalized, that is when you meet your guru. And yes, happy Ramadan. Mashallah. Thank you, Lori, for your finger heart too. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Neighbor lady, you say, I'm such a beautiful soul. When one finds beauty in something, that is a reflection of the beauty within you. Just as you truly do not see me. I'm not actually in your room right now. I'm on your phone screen. And even that, you don't directly perceive, as you see the light which comes off your phone screen into your retina. But even that you don't perceive, because the retina only optic nerve only continues to deliver the signal to your brain. And somehow or another, neurologists are still sorting out the details. Through the electrochemical firing of synapses, it generates an appearance upon your mind. But even that is secondary to what sort of qualities you associate with the image upon your mind's eye. Whether you see the good or the bad is entirely up to you. So for you to see the beauty within me is really just another way of seeing the beauty within you. And thank you, neighbor lady, for your rose and tiny. Yippee! And thank you, Fiji water bottle, for another cloud bread. Jai Sitaram. User 269. You ask, what's Bhagavate Vasudevaya? It is a Vaishnav mantra. Vaishnav meaning with reference to Vishnu, the all-pervasive one, the avatara of preservation, maintenance. In Hinduism, the Holy Trinity, well, there's many different trinities in Hinduism, but one of them is the Trimurti of creator, preserver, destroyer. One power of the source is to create. Another is to preserve what is created. And the last is to destroy that which is preserved. In the middle, between creation and destruction, is preservation. And that is what Vishnu represents, the personification of that balance. A Vaishnavite is someone who worships that personification of the source as the ultimate preserver of everything, the continuity of this moment. Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya is a mantra which is honoring that aspect of the source. Greetings, Elizabeth. You ask, do you have any advice on how to let go? The most we can do is deeply breathe out. Part of letting go means it's no longer in your control. So, if you believe that letting go is one of the things in your control, then you need to let go of that too. See how it works? What prevents us from letting go of something is our attachment to it. So, do not be attached to the idea of letting go either, as it's one of the things preventing us from letting go itself, you see. So to be truly free, one must let go of the need to let go. Hand even that power off to the universe. Kev, you ask, is it harder to whisper on here or to speak Yamish? Yamish, I like that. Both require a certain form of flow, and I wouldn't say that either are particularly more difficult. They're just different. And thank you, Fiji. water bottle. It has a good ring to it, actually. Miri, you ask, is the soul immortal? Let's play a game. It's one of my favorite games from mathematics. One of the tools in every toolkit of a mathematician is called proof by contradiction. It's one method of proving something where we assume the opposite for the sake of argument, and then we show that that assumption leads to a contradiction. And because we know that truth only bestows truth, then our assumption must be false if it led to a contradiction. So, for the sake of argument, let's assume that the soul is mortal. Let's define some terms here. The soul is just whatever you are in your essence. And mortal just means that it has a beginning and an end. So, if the soul is mortal, this is equivalent to saying that you have a beginning and an end. Now, if you have a beginning and an end, this means at some point in time you exist and another you don't. So there's some quality of the universe that changes over time. It starts off, nope, you don't exist, and then there's something happening that makes you exist, and then there's nothing again. This means that there's some quality about yourself that can exist at certain times and cannot exist at other times. This implies that you are an object, because objects have such qualities which can vary. This is already the contradiction, because as an object, you cannot be a subject. Notice, are you watching me? Yes, not a trick question. You see your phone screen. You look down, you see your body. You listen to my words. You feel the feelings coursing through your veins. You smell the air in your room. Taste what's on your tongue. We are aware of objects. So how can you be an object among them? This is a contradiction. In order to have consciousness that you are, the seer must be distinct from the seen. In this way, a subject can never be made into an object, and so it must not possess the qualities of any objects in its experience. So, because we have reached a contradiction, our game concludes. This means our original assumption must be false. And what was our original assumption? That the soul is mortal. Therefore, the opposite must be true, that the soul is immortal. And this makes sense. You have a finite body and mind, but as consciousness you neither are born nor die. And thank you, one cheeky chick, for that heartbeat a few moments ago. Ruddy, ruddy. Marcy, you share that you got the Yamsox in the mail today. You don't know where the beanie is, but you're stalking the mailman for it. I'm so happy to hear that. We can rejoice together in our little Yamsox. Hello, Ellipses. Welcome. Edward Gyampo, you ask, isn't a subject a matter of perspective? Think about how that sentence is even worded. Such a beautiful answer there. Isn't a subject a matter of perspective? That's exactly what a subject means. It means to be a reference point to things, to be a perceiver. Like how silence is the reference point of sound, how darkness is the reference point of light, blackness is the reference point of color, stillness is the reference point of movement. Nothing is the reference point of everything. So too, being a subject requires it to be separate from the presence of what it is relative to. Even though silence has no sound, it is what gives presence to all other sounds. Without silence, there would be no sound. So too, consciousness being a subject requires it to be absent of the qualities in its experience. Without that emptiness, how could it contain its experience? This is a point known in ancient times as Nirguna Brahman, that the ultimate reality, Brahman, must be Nirguna, devoid of qualities. And in Judaism, they also have a similar word for this. They call it Tzimtzum, that in order for a universe to arise, there must be some emptiness that precedes it. Otherwise, there would be no room for existence. So, you ask, is it wrong to kill and eat animals if they have consciousness? There are many details here that would take a lot of delicate words to properly untangle. I shall preface with this, that regardless of the conclusion we arrive at, it's not in anyone's best interest to shun others for the way they eat. Sometimes this conversation ends up radicalizing two groups, but this is not my intention. I wish to affirm that however you're living your life at this moment, there is nothing wrong with that. In my own practice, I have found it beneficial to transition to a more plant-based diet. But that's my body. Your body could be different. Indeed, a consequence of the thought experiment we played a few minutes ago is that everything must have consciousness. The word for this in mathematics is a corollary. It's when something you prove has additional consequences that are important. Because consciousness must not be defined anywhere in time, it also must not be defined anywhere in space, which means it's not like consciousness is here but not over there. We see the reflection of it happening here indeed. It's like the sun. The sun's rays illuminate everywhere on Earth during the daytime, but we don't see the reflection of the sun everywhere. Most materials are what's called diffuse, meaning they scatter the sunlight in random directions effectively, so you don't get a perfect reflection. smoother objects are not diffuse and are more specular. This gives rise to the reflection of an image of the sun on their surface. So in some things we see the reflection of the sun and not in others, even when everywhere is cast in broad daylight. Similarly, although consciousness is all-pervasive, we only see the reflection of it arising under certain conditions, such as in a mind-body system. Hence, not only do we possess consciousness, but so do animals. Our body also has a natural affinity for fruits and nuts. There are various physiological arguments to be made about our teeth and our cravings and our digestive tract. However, I feel this is a sufficient amount of information, so we may move on to another topic. But the conclusion I want to make is that yes, all animals do have consciousness. What you make of that is, of course, up to you. And I would recommend eating simpler foods, such as plants. But I would never judge anyone for not making that decision for themselves, because I respect the free will in everyone. And thank you, Leslie Branson, for your 2 roses. And thank you, One Cheeky Chick, for your rose, another one, and a heart me. There's a hair somewhere in my mouth. I got it. And thank you, user623, for your 7 roses. And One Cheeky Chick, thank you for another gift of flowers. Hariom Tatsat. And thank you, Erica, for your rose too. Jai Sitaram. D-Money, you ask, do plants have consciousness? Indeed, as all things do. However, it is different to digest plants because they have evolved to reproduce on the basis of being consumed. When you eat an apple, for example, you consume their seeds. And if we still lived outside in a jungle, as those seeds exited your body, they would go and grow new trees. Thank you, D-Money, for your hanging lights. You certainly light up my life and the lives of those around you. Jai Sitaram. And thank you, Tattvamasi, for your 5 roses. Hari Om Tat Sat. Pia, you ask, is it wrong to eat meat? It's a good question, and I understand how it arises. We live in a culture where actions are deemed right or wrong, but I will not make such a judgment for you. It's not that some things are right and other things are wrong. It all has to do with intention and living consciously. When you live consciously with good intentions, then there is no debate over what's right or wrong. You just are. walk down the street with the intentions of helping. Then when an old lady drops the contents of her purse on the ground, you don't stop and think, should I pick it up? What's the moral maxim here? What do I remember from my ethics class? Let me think here. She's about how old? She has so many years left, and I'm on my way to my job, which contributes now. The right actions are always done naturally through consciousness. You don't have to think about doing the right thing to do it. Similarly, when people do actions that are deemed wrong, it may simply be out of an unawareness, a lack of consciousness for something. Like if the person in front of you didn't help that old lady pick up the contents of her purse. Never attribute to malice what can be attributed to unconsciousness or ignorance. They simply might have had their awareness set on their destination and they didn't notice. Or even if they did notice but still not take action, it is because their awareness was limited in some other way to their sense of identity, which didn't include helping that old lady. So in this thought experiment, I hope you see that right and wrong are only secondary to having awareness, deep, expansive, choiceless perception, consciousness. Thank you, Marcy, for your ice cream cone. BVK, you ask for my thoughts on the Ashtavakra Gita. You know, I quoted from it earlier in this live stream, actually. When someone asked, when are you closest to the source? I said, the second line from the Ashtavakra Gita, which is, shun the experiences of the senses. Turn your attention to forgiveness, sincerity, kindness, humility, truth. This is a response to King Janaka, who asked the great sage Ashtavakra, how is knowledge to be attained, detachment acquired, liberation attained? And then Ashtavakra went into his beautiful song, his Gita. To be free, shun the experiences of the senses like poison. Turn your attention to forgiveness, sincerity, kindness, humility, truth. You are not earth, water, fire, nor air, nor are you empty space. You are awareness alone, the witness of these. Abide in awareness with no illusion of person, and you will be instantly free and at peace. Cheeky chick. You share. You express what you just said to many. Unfortunately, the many don't get it. And that's quite alright. It is not our duty to express to others what they are unaware of themselves. If one truly desires to help people, then it is best done through seeing some virtue in them and uplifting what's already present, lest they feel like they're missing something. That creates a power imbalance, but I have something to teach you. No. Let us look upon emphasize that. Thank you, Zealot, for your 2 fires. Radhe, Radhe. Zealot, you share, I am always the truest version of myself. I will never forget that. And even if you do forget that, that's also a true version of yourself. And thank you, Fiji Water Bottle, for another friendship necklace. Radhe, Radhe. And thank you, Delaney, for your heart me. Jai Sita Ram. And hello, Catbo. Happy to have you here, and happy Sunday. For those who are new, most of my live streams are not done whispered. This was a suggestion from one of my viewers that we have Sunday ASMR Sundays. Besides that, the same format applies to my other live streams. Just instead of whispering, I speak with my regular speaking voice. BVK, you ask. You mentioned having less than 7 more rebirths until mukti upon inquiry of Vedic information. Well, there's a couple nuances, but I know what you're speaking about, yes, and I'll gladly clarify. The nuance here is that the idea of a sotapanna is Buddhist. Sotapanna means a stream enterer, someone who has 7 or fewer rebirths until mukti, enlightenment. But the Buddhists also reject the authority of the Vedas. So it's not exactly coming into contact with Vedic knowledge that gets one into stream entry. What we may consider a spiritual awakening is a kind of stream entry. If any part of you realizes, yeah, enlightenment's the goal, even if you know it's not meant for you in this life, then you're a sotapanna. For example, many people do not know about spiritual things. It's just not a part of how they grew up, or their culture, or their ambitions in this life, and that's fine. Some people are aware of spiritual things, but they see it more as one avenue of life that they could go down, but it's not necessarily the main goal. But those who do understand that spirituality is the main quest, then you are said to have entered the stream, a sotapanna. Having done so, it is said you have 7 or fewer rebirths until enlightenment is attained. This is according to Buddhist thought. And yes, I understand. By Vedic info, you meant what the Sanatana Dharma refers to, the Tao, the void, Brahman. Indeed, yes, you are right. stop or at a restaurant. I enjoy waiting. The other day I went to a passport office to apply for a Canadian passport. And I was sitting in the waiting room. And they have a system where you're given a number. And when your number shows up on the screen, then you go where it's directed. And every time a new number showed up on the screen, they'd make a little beeping sound. Beep. And everyone would look up. And the gentleman sitting in front of me, must have been sitting there a while, because every time the beep sound happened, he'd look up and he'd shake his head, and sometimes he'd hit his leg, make out a sigh. And times like those, I just love sitting. Or when I'm at a restaurant, my father gets very angry sometimes, and he just is so excited to eat. Every minute that passes by, he gets hungrier. And I love that feeling of anticipation, sitting in a restaurant, not knowing how long it's gonna take. There's something about that discipline that's so euphoric. It just feels good to wait. And thank you, Steph, for your rose. Radhe, Radhe. The excitement of being next. Yeah. I like your interpretation, Billy. Anna, you asked a minute ago, what if we couldn't read, write, or in any way express our thoughts? I'm reminded of how effortlessly animals communicate, oftentimes silently. For example, Shadow, one of my cats, was in the garage the other day. And I guess he had accidentally knocked something over, and a big crash happened, and it frightened him. So he ran upstairs, and he got his brother, Sandy. And without expressing meows, just that look in his eyes, Sandy knew. I've got to be your brother and come down with you. And so both of them crawled back all the way to the garage and checked out to see if there were any dangers lurking, because there was a big crash. So there was some subtle exchange there, even though no words were spoken. No meows were transcribed or read. Just the gaze in each other's eyes was all it took to inform his brother, "You come with me. Loud noise in garage. Perhaps monster. Sneak with me back there." This is a story that my mother told me yesterday. I love how when cats see each other, oftentimes they don't feel the need to meow. Us humans, we're constantly meowing. As soon as we see anyone, we say hello. But cats, they just look at each other, and that's enough to validate and affirm their presence. They know that just looking is enough to say hello. And thank you, Steph, for your rose. Radhe, Radhe. Shakira confirms, yes, as a human, I love to validate and be validated with words. And Small, you're wondering how many kitties do I have? Just the two. Shadow and Sandy. BVK, you ask, how do I feel about phenomenon such as rainbow body and city bearing? You believe, but dogmatic perhaps? Of course, regardless of what spiritual abilities may exist, one thing's for sure, is that if we get attached to the idea of acquiring them or using them for power, then we are just as lost in this Maya as anyone else. What binds us to suffering is the false belief that we have control over the material world. When we feel like we must prepare a suitable environment for ourselves, then we'll be happy. This is some notion over control of the external universe. And cities, spiritual powers, may give you the false sense of control as well. Cities should be acquired not for gaining control, but for serving others. Someone who is able to, perhaps, clairvoyantly read another's thoughts. This should be done for the purpose of understanding and helping, not for the purpose of expressing, pompous attitude of I can do something that you can't, or to show off, or to use it for control. Spiritual power should be used only for the service of others, lest they become an obstacle in our path. And thank you, Audrey D, for your dozen roses and a tiny bee. And thank you, Christelle, for your heartbeat. Jai Sita Ram. As a love, you ask a great question. Isn't helping someone controlling the universe? It's a good question, and the answer is no, because help must be done voluntarily. Just a consent. It's a consensual process to help. You can never force someone to accept your help. That way, you don't have control over the help. And Mike, you ask, do you ever feel annoyed by serving others when they're very happy to always take? That's an excellent question as well. And one should not do service if the other party believes that they're entitled to do it. The reason it's important to set that boundary is because otherwise it doesn't qualify as service. When someone feels entitled to something and you give in to that insecurity, then you are only validating their insecurity. In the long run, that's actually not going to help anyone. When we set an example for others by creating healthy boundaries, then that helps others to be validated in setting their own boundaries, as well as politely informs the person that this is something they need to be conscious of. Kirarnov, you share that you're sad, but you're also happy. You're really lost, but lost in a right path kind of way. Yes. There is so much beauty in sadness, and so much comfort in feeling lost. I'm happy that you're able to see the duality of life that way. BVK, you say, the universe's progression is our progression. Focusing on the illusionary ego does nothing but impede. Indeed. I am reminded of a quote from The Law of One, in which Ra states, whether you are in service to the self or service to others, it's still service to the universe. Thank you, Kirano, for your rosa. I see. Radhe, Radhe. And love and light. Yes. Thank you, bruh, for your square of roses. A 3x3 square. 9 of them, thank you. And hello, Gizmo. Good evening, bruh. Grandma Lala. You ask, how do you feel about a mother who helps her daughter and 3 grandsons financially? Sounds like a very classic example of what it means to be a mother. Sometimes she may feel as though she has too many dependents, but in the long run it becomes the greatest blessing, for she becomes no other than a reflection of the Divine Mother, whose care includes 7 billion, 8 billion people, and counting. However, she should allow herself some time to heal as well, in her own terms and on her own time. It's not selfish to take some time away when you can to focus on your own healing so that you may perform even better as a mother. And thank you, user 623, for your 6 roses. Radhe, Radhe. Welcome, Dan Tutorial. I do remember your name and profile picture. Happy to have you here. And today I'm feeling quite alright, thank you. Have you share fun fact? You're painting birdhouses while this is happening. That's so lovely. Some birds, they have even higher color perception than humans. So, I'm sure they'll appreciate your color palette. Thank you, Brink Recovery, for your rose. Always happy to have you here. Radhe, Radhe. And Aqua Circle ASMR. Thank you for your 26 roses and a heart me. Jai Sita Ram. And Audrey D, thank you for your heart me and team bracelet. Hari Om Tat Sat. Dan Tutorial, you ask, does being in love with someone, is that an obligation or a choice? Sometimes we can choose to be obligated. Sometimes we're obligated to choose itself. It's not your duty to love, because you are love. In every way, in everything around you, in everyone that you meet, naturally you love. And it's a beautiful thing when you focus that love one-pointedly. What happens when one focuses love like a laser? Things begin to blossom. If you just take care of 1 square foot of dirt in your backyard, if you water it every day, mix the soil up so it doesn't get too firm, add in some fertilizer, ensure that it gets sunlight, focus all your love on 1 square foot. In the springtime, I'm sure it'll be the most beautiful square foot in your whole yard. If we try to rationalize our heart, then it never gets its way. It's just like raising a child. A child's ambitions are never rational, but the beautiful moments happen when we try to make them work anyway. Thank you, Kelsey, for your tiny yippee. And thank you, John Simon Ritchie, for your 2 roses. Radhe, Radhe. The MM, you ask very kindly, am I unwell? Fortunately, I'm feeling quite healthy, but by the recommendation of Sky Guardian, we have allotted Sundays for ASMR, as per the whispers. But I thank you for your compassion. And thank you, Mike, for your tiny and 9 roses. Yum, 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 yum. Thank you for your gratitude, KSP Hero. I am very blessed to have this opportunity to be in service to you. BVK, you ask, theory of mind. What is the theory of mind? Perhaps this is your question. The mind is controlled by the buddhi. Higher than the mana is the buddhi. Higher than the mentality is the intellectuality. If one wishes to control the mind, all one has to do is take charge of the intellect, and then the mind naturally submits. Good evening, Blue. Dan Tutorial, you ask, is the mind the same as the brain, or do we have souls? let me ask you, Dan Tutorial, do you have a computer at home? Like a laptop or desktop? And if you do, is it what kind is it? Is it PC, or is it a MacBook or a Chromebook? What kind of computer do you have? It's a laptop. Yeah. So your laptop can come in very different forms. You can have a Lenovo or a MacBook or a Surface Pro or so many different kinds. And they vary not just in hardware, but also in software. Some of them run Windows. Some of them run Mac OS. Others run Linux. Others Chrome OS. The hardware is what runs the software. And you can run pretty much any software on any hardware. The brain and mind have a similar relationship. The brain is the hardware, but the mind is the software which runs on the brain. But even the hardware and software is separate from the user. The user is the one who is aware of them both. So too, consciousness is neither software nor hardware based. It's the user which uses the software running on the hardware. So too, the consciousness, or the soul, for example, as you have put it, is the user, the witness. And just like on your laptop, you have to make a little account. You have to type in your username and your password. So too, in our mind, we have a little identity. We call that the ego. The person that's in your laptop isn't a full expression of who you are. It's a very small part. It's your identity card for using this system. But if someone stole your laptop and read your username and looked at your files, it might reveal a little bit of who you are, but not the full picture. Similarly, your ego is like your user profile. Indeed, Tattvamasi. Someone analyzing your sense of self, your name, your secrets, and your memories, they might come to some understanding of who you are. But ultimately, as consciousness, your true self is so much greater than all of that information. And thank you, Aqua Circle ASMR, for another 38 roses. Radhe, Radhe. And thank you, Dylan, for your rose. Jai Sita Ram. And Brink Recovery, thank you for your rosa. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Another great question from Dan Tutorial. Does free will really exist? And before I answer that, I must read John Simon's comment, who says that mantras are our antivirus then. Such a great extension to the metaphor, yes. I love that. And just like mantras have a variety to them, so do various antivirus software. Thank you, Kev, for your rose. And Briel, thank you for your 18 roses. Radhe. say I'm going to the washroom, a whole chain of events happen. Clearly, it is the laws of physics which allow our body to send the signals to our nerves, thus contracting muscles and eventually getting our physical circumstance into the washroom. We are not directly in charge of this process. We aren't compelling atom number 316,004,042 to move 3 millimeters to the left, and then sending this electron over there and this proton over there. We're not actively arranging our molecular structure in such a way for this process to happen. We're not decoding our DNA with various enzymes and accumulating amino acid chains to start some protein structure and delivering hormones. No. The body facilitates itself, but the body is instructed by the mind. So although the body does not have free will, the mind has free charge over it, some of it. But even the mind we do not directly control. If we did, it would be so much easier. For example, falling asleep. Do you consciously bring up memories from middle school about how embarrassing you were during that one encounter with your crush? No, if we did, we wouldn't do that. At nighttime, the mind becomes so rampant it's out of our control. And it eventually tires itself out and we go to sleep. But these thoughts themselves seem to just come up from the subconscious. But we have a gatekeeper. There's something which decides which thoughts can surface and which return back to the subconscious. This is the intellect. The intellect is the one that instructs the mind. More of this thought, less of that. So although we don't have free will over the mind, the intellect has free reign over the mind. So is this where our free will lies? No, not quite. We're almost there. But the intellect, too, is not directly in our control. The intellect is guided by our experiences, and our experiences depend on how we identify. Two people watching the same movie may get two entirely different meanings, because the first person is a biologist, and the other, they like to crochet. So the biologist is looking for the life, the ecosystem. They're looking for the patterns in the animals and the relationship between life forms. The person who's crocheting, they're more interested in the textiles. Their awareness is categorically into different things during the movie. What we do have control over is not this body, not this mind, not even our intellect, but our ego, our sense of identity. Through the power of association, we become aware of some things and not others. Depending on how you identify, you get different experiences out of life. And those individual experiences shape our intellect. And then that intellect, riding on the knowledge it's been given, withdraws itself from the mind and cultivates a certain mentality. From this mentality, certain thoughts arise and others subside. Then the body takes action according to that mindset. So, the free will lies in the power of association. In every moment, we can choose to be more aware of one thing and not of another. This directs our sense of self, which in turn directs the intellect, which inherently directs the mind, and that the body. Thank you, MJ, for your rose that you sent a few minutes ago. Radhe, Radhe. And thank you, Audrey D, for your ice cream cone, your rose and cloud bread. Jai Sita Ram. And Ernie, thank you for your beach volleyball and your friendship necklace. I'm a little behind on extending my gratitude back to you, so I thank you for your patience. Thank you, one cheeky chick, for another rose. And Chris, thank you for your rose too. Hari Om Tat Sat. And McLean, thank you for your rose. Jai Sita Ram. And thank you to the rest of my viewers who remain patient as I reflect back tokens of generosity, such as Camilo de Silva. Thank you for your heartbeat. And Potnik Outlakis, thank you for your 3 roses. Radhe, Radhe. Tatvamasi, thank you for another 3 roses too. And Ernie, thank you for your hearts. Billy, you asked, do my amazing answers to all these varied questions just come to you or come from your studies? Well, whether they are amazing or not is certainly up to you. What insight one may find in my words may not be the same as another, depending on where their awareness has accumulated. And I do speak from experience, but also from what arises in my studies too. Much of the words and vocabulary and stories are not made up on the spot, but come from listening to others who relay them. But it's not like I have a script going into these live streams. Indeed, this is just a flow of thoughts, consciousness streaming, and sometimes that stream guides me to new things, other times to old things which turn up again and again with new meaning. It certainly depends. And thank you, KSP Hero, for the Lily the Leopard. That's so cute. I don't know if I've ever seen that gift before, so I'm very honored. Such a powerful token of generosity. It is never expected, but always appreciated. Radhe, Radhe. Just some clues. You ask, how can one open for new, more alright people in life and feel more secure around them? There are 3 parts to your question, and I'll handle them one by one. How can we open? We open ourselves through gratitude. If we feel like this present moment is an enemy, then how can we open? Being closed means that we're in defense, that there's something around us which will prey upon our vulnerability. So one way to realize that there is not a threat is to start pointing out things that you're grateful for. example, I'm so happy that there's a roof over my head, that my eyes and ears still work, that this household is calm in this moment, that I have a good job for me, friends I can depend on. I'm so grateful to have working legs, or even if these aren't positive things in your life, you can even turn negatives into the positive. For example, someone in a wheelchair might say that they are so grateful to have this opportunity to understand what it's like to be in this kind of body and the challenges that it has given me to grow. Or you could be sick in some way and be so grateful for all those that take care of you while you're sick. There are innumerable ways to be grateful. And as you learn how to do this, it becomes easier and easier. And you begin to open up to these areas of your life again. How do we attract the right people? Unfortunately, this is not something entirely in our control. Instead of trying to attract the right people, try to look for the right things within people. That way, it's not that some people are right and others are wrong. Everyone is a bundle of qualities, some virtuous, some defective. It's up to us to find the virtues in others and not let their defects take away our happiness. And lastly, how can we feel safe? Vulnerability is a blessing. Only when others might have taken advantage of our vulnerability in the past, which is quite common, do we feel like it is better to close up. But being vulnerable can be a great gift to others because it is a role model behavior to allow yourself to be so raw and authentic. One of the regrets that I have had, that I have since learned from, is in a relationship. Sometimes you might feel that one of you has to be the protector, but looking back on the past, I now have come to realize how important allowing yourself to be vulnerable with your partner is, because it actually validates their vulnerability and fears. Because if you do assume the role of a protector, then that might signal to them that something indeed is wrong and they do need to be protected from something. But if you can allow yourself to be vulnerable around your loved ones, then that signals the opposite effect, which is there is nothing you need to be afraid of in this moment. Alright, that was a bit of a long-winded answer, but I'm very grateful to have the opportunity. And thank you, BVK, for your rose, a GG, a TikTok, another rose, and another one. Thank you, my friend. Radhe, Radhe. And thank you, Matilda, for your rose. Jai Sitaram. And Art Souls, I appreciate your rose and friendship necklace. Hariom Tatsat. Thank you, Ragnhildur, for your rose too. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Thank you, John Simon Ritchie, for your heart me. And Tatvamasi, thank you for my 2 cheer me ups. Radhe, Radhe. I am very delighted to be in service to you. Just some clues. Thank you for being here and asking such an important question on behalf of everyone. speak on the feeling of overwhelm and how to get out of it. Know this feeling to be so natural. It's a miracle that not all of us are overwhelmed all of the time. Because if you think deeply about anything, it becomes overwhelming. I remember my father. He told me about his anxiety in his early 20s. He said that he bought a telescope and he used to look up into the stars. And then he bought some books about what goes on in space. And as he read, he started getting more and more overwhelmed. Some books about what goes on in space. And as he read, he started getting more and more overwhelmed. Quark and gluon, proton, neutron, nucleon, atoms. There's so much chaos happening. Virtual particles popping in and out of existence. And when you zoom out, there's chaos happening on large scales too. Supermassive black holes consuming millions of times the mass of our own sun. My goodness. Stars going supernova. Neutron stars not even made of atoms. A single spoonful of them could weigh as much as an entire city. While I was monologuing, it appears the internet had disconnected me. But the point being, this universe is very overwhelming. And if you try to feel like it's your duty to understand it all, then it becomes overwhelming. But just as my dad also relayed, he realized that he was allowed to be here. He was allowed to exist without having understood it all. The trap of awareness is that as you expand your awareness, the trap of awareness is that as you expand your awareness, oh, my apologies, it seems to have disconnected me again. Please let me know when my internet connection is back, so that I may speak to you and not to the void. Well, in either case, I'm speaking to the void. But one case is a lot more personal. It's back. Okay. I'll just summarize what I was saying. Which is, the secret to being less overwhelmed is to not feel the pressure to analyze everything within your awareness. Be aware without necessity of labeling. Be conscious without pressure to categorize, to deconstruct, to analyze, to rationalize, to reason. You need not divide the world into boxes in order for it to make sense. It makes sense in that it doesn't make sense. Nothing about this experience makes sense except in that we're unified by our ignorance. I'll happily shake your hand to the fact that both of us are equally as mystified as to why we are here. And in that, we are bonded. Thank you, Fiji water bottle, for a cloud bread. And thank you, Annie, for your rose. Radhe, Radhe. Lovely bird. This will be one of the last comments that I read before I start wrapping things up and bring our attention to our final segments of the day. But Your comment is very important to me, so I want to read it. You share that you still struggle with your awareness being tied to your shame. It's hard. I'm very grateful that you brought this point up because shame is something that a lot of us experience in many different ways, especially tied to awareness too. When we feel aware of something that others may not, they might cue into that and become defensive. And I'll tell you why. For example, let's say Jimmy and Susan are hanging out, and Susan has a really high sense of awareness. Her awareness just permeates everything. Well, Billy, he might get defensive because his mind might cue into the fact that she's able to see things about himself that he's not able to. And because he might be afraid of what's hiding underneath the surface, he blocks Susan out. Because that's... Did I say Jimmy or Billy? Jimmy or Billy, I forget. And Emmy blocks Susan out because by doing so, he's protecting his sense of self. Sometimes we shut others out because they see things that we're afraid to recognize ourselves. And so, you may feel shame associated with that because others may try to belittle your awareness out of their own insecurity. But actually, you were never a burden to others. Having an awareness is a blessing. And the higher your awareness is, the greater the blessing you are to those around you. So, you need not feel ashamed from this point. Now, I would like to begin to wrap things up, assuming our Wi-Fi sustains itself. But before then, I'd like to end with a question of the day, followed by a reading from Swami Mukundanandaji's Art and Science of Happiness. It has stayed good. My question: why is sleep important? Why is sleep important? And thank you, Ragnhildur, for another rose. And Tattvam Asi, thank you for your 5 roses too. And Laura, thank you for your half-dozen roses. Kristlin, you say dreams. Indeed, dreams are a great way to process the events of the day before, or other subconscious patterns. Sky Guardian, you say it keeps the brain chemicals in balance. This is true. We only have so many chemicals to expend during the day, so many hormones to distribute information. We gotta recharge our reservoirs. Spookbat, you share that it clears your mindset. Indeed it does. Nothing like starting a new day with a fresh start. And User623, you say, because your unconscious needs a time and space to play. I love that. Play is so important. And Reezy, you say to keep your mind healthy. Indeed, indeed. John Simon Ritchie, you say for endless reasons. Couldn't argue with that. And Nirvar Moon and Star, you say sleep is important to without it, our mental and physical health suffers. Yeah. And last one, Kirunov, you share that it's an act of total surrender. We are vulnerable at sleep, yet we still look forward to waking up. Indeed. And with that, I thank you all for answering my question of the day. As you all have said, there are so many different valuable reasons for sleep. So, the next time you sleep in a little bit, you may forgive yourself, as you probably needed it. So, thank you. Thank you for the heart, me, and team bracelet. One with an emoji and waves. No vanity, that's right. Thank you. You also send a disco love. Radhe, Radhe. And thank you, Lisa, for your fire. Jai Sitaram. And Naomi, thank you for the cap. And thank you, Annie, for another paper crane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. As we end the live today, we will first read from a final chapter of Swami Mukundanandaji's Art and Science of Happiness. Earlier this live stream, we summarized chapter 11, which was to do with the Vedic perspective on happiness. Tonight, we begin the final chapter of this book, chapter 12, The Ultimate Happiness. The universe has likely brought you here for a very important reason. Through consistent effort of reading just a few pages at a time, in this live stream, we've made it to the final chapter of this book, which has all to do with happiness. So what is this ultimate happiness that all of us are so deeply yearning for? Swamiji says, our road to happiness has now reached the ocean of bliss. We have understood that the perfect joy the soul seeks is in the source of existence, God. And yet, the discussion is incomplete. Even in the personality of God, there are varieties of bliss that you can choose from. The highest among them should be our goal. An ocean seems like one body of water from afar, but when you inspect it closely, you realize it is not a single undivided entity. Within it are varieties of aquatic creatures, coral, minerals, microbes, and chemicals. Similarly, based on the nature of their spiritual practice, devotees experience the bliss of God in several ways. In this last chapter of the book, we will look at the various kinds of divine bliss in the spiritual realm. And we'll, with that synopsis, leave it there for now. And tomorrow, we'll begin our live with a distinction between Brahmananda versus Premananda. That is, the bliss of the ultimate reality versus the bliss of divine love. These are the kinds of bliss that may be distinguished through non-duality and duality. Each path has its own kind of bliss. Whether you tread the path as an Advaita Vedantin or a Dvaita Vedantin, different kinds of bliss await you. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. of our daily Sangha, this being ASMR Sunday, and due to its success, I think I shall be happy to continue doing it again next week. But tomorrow we'll return with the regular format where I speak with my regular inside voice. Thank you for another disco love. Or no vanity. Always happy to be in service to you. And thank you, MJ, for another rose. And John Simon Ritchie, thank you for your 2 roses. Urade, urade. Let this be an offering to Jagat Guru Dam Shri Kripaluji Maharaj. He is the Guru of Swami Mukundananda, the author of the book that we were reading. He has had many divine qualities manifest through his form. So many beautiful stories exist of him. And if you want to experience his grace more directly, I've linked his name, his organization, and Swami Mukundananda's, his organization, in my link tree that's in my bio. So you may experience their graces more directly. Now I believe, given that this is an ASMR video, just a long one, I'll be happy to upload it to my ASMR YouTube channel. So if you go to the link in my bio, you'll see at the top there's 2 YouTube channel links. The first goes to my Yamsox Lives channel, where I upload most of these past lives. But I'll also be uploading this one instead to my ASMR channel, which I do other ASMR content too. For example, we've been reading the Bhagavad Gita with a whispered voice too. That's on that channel. And you can look forward to the 2nd chapter coming out relatively soon. Thank you, Spookbat, for your 2 roses. And thank you, Neighbor Lady, for the team bracelet. Radhe, Radhe. Thank you, Billy, for your 22 roses. And Annie, thank you for another 2. Riom Tatsat. And thank you, MJ, for your 4 roses. The name of my ASMR channel is Yamsox ASMR - Spiritual ASMR. But you can find all of my other accounts and platforms directly linked in the link tree that's in my bio. And one last advertisement before I go. Although I am immensely grateful for all of your tokens of generosity that are gifted digitally through these live streams, if ever you wanted to have something in return, there are Yamsox, as my username suggests. There in my link tree there's a store section, and you can purchase these comfy socks that have cute little yams and sweet potatoes on them. They're quite comfy. So that's one way of supporting me and getting something physical in return. But with that, I wish you all good night. And I very much am grateful for this opportunity to be in service of you all again. Namaste, John Simon. Yes, and good night, Amanda. Radhe Krishna, Krishna have a beautiful present moment.